Thank you for joining this webinar. This is my semi-regular update on how AI is evolving and what the implications of this evolution are for the market research industry, principally focusing on data analysis and reporting. I remain pretty shocked by the speed with which everything is changing with AI. I'm going to dig into how AI affects market research. Most of my time is going to be spent looking at the new capabilities that have only become clear in the last 6 months or so. And perhaps this is just clear to me, but that's what I'm going to be talking about principally. I'm also going to look at what hasn't yet changed. There's a few areas where I come across clients from time to time, or other colleagues who are like believing that AI can do things that it actually can't do. And so I'll talk about them. And then I'm also going to briefly review the things that we've known for quite a while that AI can do, just in case you don't know it. AI largely lives in our browsers. It can't manipulate physical objects. It can't pick up a pen. The days of the sci-fi robots aren't here yet. As AI can't go to the pub or hang out near the water cooler, AI is usually missing some important context. So it's another reason why we humans are still relevant. While I'm perpetually amazed at how well AI reasons, we do know that it's reasoning by working backwards from lots of patterns rather than by what the academics call symbolic and formal logic. And we know that some of the consequences of this are that there's certain types of problems it's not very good at. For example, a baby can learn a language with much smaller amount of data than a large language model can. So humans are still much better at reasoning from small amounts of data, which is good. Again, we're still useful. And maybe this explains why, despite all the magical things that are getting built with large language models and with AI more generally, most of the genius about what to build, not most, all the genius about what to build is really coming from humans. It's following our instructions. We don't have any documented examples, near as I can tell, of this new technology inventing something profound and new. It more helps us invent. This next one catches people out quite a lot. AI can't really do maths, can't do statistical calculations particularly well either. It's nowhere near as sophisticated as statistical software from, say, the 1960s, which is very lucky for us here at Displayr. But I keep coming across people go, no, you're wrong, Tim. I use it. I get my survey analysis done. And I'm always quite surprised. So I'm going to kind of show this off by asking ChatGPT if it thinks it can do maths. So go to ChatGPT, do a temporary chat. Okay. Now, the thing I want you to appreciate is these are very simple arithmetic mistakes. Now, one of the funny things about large language models, well, not funny things, one of the cool things is they've recently developed this ability to remember things. And that means it's actually quite hard to actually catch out anymore when it does make a mistake, because it remembers the mistake and doesn't make it again. But where this affects us in market research is if you give it a job which involves lots and lots and lots of separate calculations, there's a good chance that there's some mistakes in there. And a very smart colleague of mine, not one of our employees, I will say, said to me a while ago, actually, I use it for all of my data analysis and it doesn't make mistakes. But think about it. If you've conducted a survey analysis and about 10,000 percentages and counts have been calculated, how would you know if 10% of them are wrong? It's not like you can manually redo them all. So not very good at that yet. Now, this problem is another example of hallucination. It's kind of guessing the answer to things, and often it's a magically good guesser because it's got a lot of patterns, but tends to guess wrong. And it's not very good at checking its own work. Like, it's getting much better, but it's still can't actually do it. When it makes a mistake, it doesn't usually know it's made that mistake. Again, something that hasn't changed yet. Now, one of the big fixes for the inability of the newer technologies to do math is that AI researchers invented the ability for large language models to use tools. And so, for example, when I show you a couple of the agents that we have in Displayr later, you'll see that they are calculating lots of things. But what's going on in the background is it's not that the AI is doing the calculations. It's instead that the AI is looking through all of Displayr's existing capabilities and going, okay, which technique do I want to use? And so the AI is orchestrating the calculation of numbers, but not performing the calculation of numbers, if you get the distinction that I'm trying to explain. Okay, let's jump into a little more detail, though, on how AI is already useful in market research and what kind of level of impact we're seeing is. A widely publicized study by MIT says that 95% of enterprise AI applications have failed. It's a sobering number, isn't it? But a recent study by BCG says 41% of people fear losing their jobs. It says over the next 10 years to AI. So AI failing on the one hand, most of the time, people being scared. Is it a hype kind of thing? No, it's nothing to do with hype. I actually think the 95% number is just wrong, but we'll come to that in a second and why we care. Now, fortunately, there was a study that was released last week of market research CEOs, obviously a very wise sample, conducted by proper market researchers, not those MIT people, such as the venerable Jean-Marc Leger and Dave Schultz, and it shows really widespread adoption of AI in market research. And I don't really come across any clients or prospective clients anymore who aren't using AI for something. And so we're certainly as industry not failing. And I asked ChatGPT if we're kind of unique as an industry and which industries were going to be most affected. And it did one of those wonderful authoritative analyses it does. And sure enough, we sit there as one of the industries which it already thinks is pretty heavily disrupted. And I think that's certainly true. And we'll look at some of the specific cases about how it's disrupted shortly. And when I say shortly, I mean right now. So there's all of these things that most of us are doing already. And I'm just going to quickly show them in case you're not doing them, and also as a way of getting us on the same playground. So, and I'm going to show off a new feature that our AI team built. So I go into this calculation menu at the top, and I'm going to choose custom AI. And then I'm going to draw a box. And this is where my results of my AI will appear. So this is just like having, if you like, a version of Gemini or ChatGPT, and this is Gemini, within the app. But you'll see why this is useful in a second. But I'm just going to do the kind of thing that you would do directly in ChatGPT or Gemini itself. So let's ask it to help. And maybe we'll zoom in a little bit for those of you that aren't looking at massive monitors. So I'm launching a new AI product designed for market research. And I'm actually not doing this, but let's imagine I am. We might do this. In the product, so I can't spell, but fortunately it's good at correcting spelling. What other products like this exist? So I'm getting it to do some secondary research for me on whether there's an opportunity for a synthetic respondent product. Now, I'm sure you're all doing this, and if you're not, you should be doing this. It's just a massive time save. And it gives me a report, and it tells me some of the key brands out there. So nice work, huge time save. We're all experiencing that. Or I could tell it to write me a questionnaire. Now, surprisingly enough, well, surprisingly to me, because I always thought I was good at writing questionnaires, and I still think I'm better, to be honest, than I think what we're about to see here is. But I find the questionnaires that it writes are actually much better than those that my students used to write when I was a teacher, academic, and also much better than most novice researchers right now. Weirdly enough, it's tried to write us code to do it here, which is, so it does make mistakes, and I'm just going to tell it that I want the output to be as text, which will avoid that issue. And so I've now got a questionnaire. You can try that at home. It's a pretty quick way of getting a questionnaire that we can iterate on. Now, it's also great at doing actual generation of synthetic respondents. So I'm going to give it a new job. Please generate 20 synthetic respondents providing a representative cross-section of market researchers. So research into research. For each, describe how they would react to this new product. All right, so this is how you can generate synthetic respondents. Obviously, there's more nuanced and complicated approaches to doing this. Okay, so now we've got a sample of 20 people telling us how they feel. And this will allow me to also illustrate a little more about the tool that I'm showing you at the moment and why it's useful. Because so far it's just on things you could have done directly in ChatGPT, but now we're going to get it. We're going to create a new little box on our page, and we're going to tell it, we'll zoom in again so you can see it a bit easier. We're going to ask it now to, what are the main themes in this table? And then we're going to click on the little name above the table. And so what this tool is, it's a very simple way that you can hook up your data directly to large language models. That's the key point of this custom feature I've got. And so it's now come down here and it's got themes it's identified in the data. So that's pretty cool. And if you're not aware, you can get it to translate. Please do this in French. And now, for those of you that don't know, this is the basic mechanism or flow that is used for most automated AI-driven text categorizations. And so it's just a third little step in this process where we'll insert a last little custom AI, and we'll say to it, please work out which of these people, what's a better phrase? Which of the following themes, and then we'll click on the name of the themes, best describes each of the respondents, and then we'll click on the respondent. So just as I said, we're feeding the data into the prompt directly. Please return the result as a table where there is one row per respondent. So we're trying to get into the file format so that we can import that into whatever other tool we're using. It didn't do a great job there, did it? Okay, which of the following themes best describes each of the respondents? So AI doesn't, it's a bit like working with dogs and children. It doesn't always do what you want. Let's present where each row represents one row per respondent, and the columns show the themes. The fear that the AI is not going to work on command. Oh, all right, cool. And so now we've got raw data in the right format. It's in French, and we're along the way. Cool. So I think that is kind of cool technology, but you probably know about that technology already. Other things that you hopefully know already are it's great at writing code, it's great at creating images, it's fast and it's going to keep getting faster, it's so cheap and it's going to keep getting cheaper, and it's smart and it's going to keep getting smarter. So what are the new capabilities? And we touched on persistent memory before, but the biggest breakthrough of the last 6 months isn't, and sorry, I've just got a little note from Lauren telling me that she's having a problem with the volume being maxed out. I'm going to speak up a little bit. Somebody tell me if I'm now shouting. It's not my goal. Anyway, so what are the new capabilities? The biggest breakthrough of the last 6 months, as I started saying, isn't really technical. It's one of mindset. We've all become much better at figuring out how to use AI, and there's a lot of people out there who believe even if AI never improved, we've got years and years of productivity gains just in using what's already built. And I'm one of the people who believes that. And I'll explain about this using our latest agent, the data preparation agent. So I am going to bring in some data. It's an example survey many of you will have seen before. And I'm going to right-click on the data set and choose Data Preparation Agent. And it is going to pop me up a whole lot of options of things I could do for data cleaning, whatever. Now, I'm just going to click Continue rather than explain them. I encourage you to try it out. But I'll tell you now about the key logic of how it works and why this is a really kind of important breakthrough. And it's something that we just didn't figure out until relatively recently. So the kind of thing that a lot of people did, including us, when you're initially trying to get the modern AI or large language model techniques to work, is you'd say to it, clean my data. And it tended to fail. Like you could be impressed a little bit by some of the stuff it did, or extremely impressed, but it still didn't quite get you to where you wanted to get. And the breakthrough that we've had, and a lot of people have had, is it's just the wrong way to use the technology. The right way to use the technology is to break the problem into really small parts and then use the technology to coordinate those small parts. So for example, what it's doing while I'm talking here is it's reading through all of the questions one by one, and it's checking that the labels and everything match the name. And then on a one-by-one basis, it kind of goes, is this a good question name? Is it not a good question name? And it just tries to change that one question name, but it knows it's got this job of looking at the question name rather than general data cleaning and tidying. Similarly, it reads through each of the labels and goes, is this a recommendation question? If so, maybe I'll calculate Net Promoter Score. But it has that specific little micro task. It goes through and it went through. You can see it's given us a report of all the little things that's changed in this data file. I'll keep talking a little bit more about it. It goes through and goes, is it an open-ended question? If it is, I'm going to read through the responses and verify if they've given me a garbage response. Is it an ID variable? If so, I'm going to look to see if it's a duplicate. Is it a variable where somebody could, or variable set where somebody could have done straight lining? If so, I'm going to calculate the straight lining, but only if there's 5 or more variable sets. And I'm going to have a more relaxed standard if there's a large number of variables in the variable set. If I've got a lot of flags, should I delete some of those responses? And so that's the kind of logic. You break the problem into lots of small parts, and then it turns out that large language models are great at performing the individual tasks and orchestrating all of these individual tasks. So it's gone through, it's done a whole lot of cleaning. You can see what it's done here. And we're going to go on and look at another example. Now, I'm keen to get people's feedback when they use this tool, and the more feedback we get, the more functionality we'll add to it. Now, last year, I generated this cat on chat, or is it cat GPT? You can see my prompt. I'm always amazed by these cats. I was trying to make a point, which is that people give AI problems that it's not good at. This was a naive dream, I said in the webinar. But just as with data preparation, I was entirely wrong. Yes, if you give ChatGPT your data set and a prompt like this, you aren't going to get something that's commercial grade. You're not going to get something you can use. But if you break the problem down into all of its little parts and get the AI to do the parts it's good at, and get traditional statistical software to do the parts it's good at, and get the AI to orchestrate or coordinate the whole activity. It's amazing what it can do. So if you haven't seen it yet, let's add it to the bottom of the report. A second agent, but the first one released is called the research agent. Now, it's going to, once it's had a quick look at the data, it's going to offer to do the whole data preparation agent again, and we're going to skip that because we've already done it. Now, what it's doing is it's gone through and it's looked at all of the data and it's tried to figure out why we collected the data, and it's trying to encourage us to give it a good prompt, because as many of you know, if you say to somebody, here's some data, find the insights, you don't get much of value. You need to share the context with the AI just as you would with a person. And so in an ideal world, I would spend time explaining to you how to make this prompt a whole lot better. We've got another webinar which talks about this tool, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, so I'm just going to click continue. But when you use this, do give it more specific information, please. And check out our other webinar on the research agent, which is on our homepage. And so now it's going through and it's trying to work out which data to use. And it's gone through, and there's a whole lot of data cleaning stuff and respond ID that it's not recommended. It's recommended pretty much everything else, because one of the things it did in the background was it categorized all my text data automatically, or coded it automatically. I'm just going to uncheck the two open-enders I've got because I don't need them anymore, and I don't want to distract the large language model having to reprocess all that text data. And so now it is going off and it's reading through the tables, creating a plan. So reading through the data, creating an analysis plan, doing a whole lot of analyses, and it's going to write a report, which I'll come back and show you. But back to new capabilities. So I've shown you the data preparation agent. I've shown you the research agent. And with each of them, I've explained this core logic of breaking down the problem into lots of parts and how AI then becomes completely magical in its ability to automate stuff. There's a next generation of magic, and we're not quite there. We're on the way there. We're not quite there, but I'll show you another product. This is a great product called Bolt, and there are lots of products like this out there. And these allow you to write in plain English what software you want to create. Now, we want to get to plain English what research you want to create. Not there, working on it, but I will show you the kind of technology that's now out there. And this is, you as market researchers may be worried or excited by what AI is changing. In software engineering, people are excited / terrified, because what I'm about to show you, there's just no chance of having got this for less than about $5,000 if I was paying a consultant, and it could have ended up vastly more. I want an app that allows me to, so we're going to together build a text categorization app. Hopefully note 3. Now, what I'm illustrating here is this new type of user interface called the conversational user interface. Now, the whole strength of this user interface like this, where you say what you want to have in plain English, is that you don't have to learn the app. Not the whole strength. That's the first kind of strength. You don't have to learn the app. You can just go and do it. You can also, and I'm not going to illustrate this now, but you should hopefully do this with ChatGPT. You can have conversations with it and clarify things. It's a much more iterative workflow. The less obvious benefit of these new conversational user interfaces, or reason why they're so cool, and it took us a while to work, or took me in particular, about a year to figure this out, is for many things, it's true this is a slow way to work. But the things that it's a slow way to work are the things that are getting entirely automated by AI. And so the complexity of products like Q and Displayr is because the user interfaces are designed so that you can efficiently do a lot of grunt work. But if you get the AI to do that grunt work, you don't need to have such a complicated user interface. So our whole company's focused on this. You can see this thing is going off and it's going through each of the steps. And in about 10 minutes, it's going to have built the tool. I did it before the webinar. It's done it. Let's click upload a file. We will find a decent file. It's giving me the ability to choose the questions. I didn't ask it to, it's giving me a preview so I can verify that question 10 is the one. In this case, it contains reasons for disliking mobile phones. I'm going to tell it to classify with AI, so it's going to do the text coding. The theory I want to emphasize, this is a completely working and usable app. If you have a routine business problem and you're able to fairly accurately describe what it does, you can build an app now to automatically do it. It's magical, terrifying if you're in my game of software, but magical. So just as we showed you before, it's gone off to the large language model. I'm going to now export it. And very quick as a flash, it's created an export file. Maybe I click that again, isn't it? Yep, so it's export the file, so fast. And we will quickly have a look at it. So we can see the research agent's results here, but I'm going to upload the file that I just did. Okay, so I have this new file at the bottom, and at the end, it's got this classification group. I'm just going to drag it into our report tree so we can look at the table. And so a few things to note. With a few words, we built a text categorization piece of software that we could reuse again, again. It's amazing what it did. We went really quickly. It actually isn't doing awesome text categorization. You'll see here it's got 37% of people unclassified. The data preparation agent that I showed you a little bit earlier, it was doing text categorization in the background before, and it's vastly better than the tool I just showed you. So if I've got a separate question here, and if I smart, I'll show the same question, but thoughts about France, it's gone through and it's come up with really nice categories and it's managed to classify all of it. So there's still some skill knowledge you need to know here, but you could keep iterating with this guy here and keep giving it additional. So it's built the tool in the background, and you could say, look, currently it's not classifying all responses, and I want people to be allowed to be in multiple categories. So you give it conversational feedback and it keeps going, and quite remarkable. Now, the other agent which was going in the background was the research agent. I want to point out the report to you. This is the executive summary it's written, right? So it's written a proper summary with proper conclusions. I'll give you a moment to read them. Now, I've spent a lot of my earlier life training university students doing bachelor's and master's degrees at pretty well-ranked universities, so clever people, to write research reports. And virtually nobody writes a research report as good as this in the beginning. Notice the next bit is broken up into a nice hierarchical structure, and I can follow out. And then I go to pages where it's created charts for me, and it's got commentary. So in no time at all, it's written a report which does a reasonably good job. Is it as good a job as you do? Probably not. But a report like this, you could easily pay $5,000 for or more. But the actual AI cost was about a cent. So quite magical, quite remarkable. So to trigger this in the report tree, to the research agent, and it runs that report, question might come up. In tracking, you want to just make sure you've created a variable first up, which shows you the time periods you want to compare, and then you tell it to do a comparison. So back in the background here, AI has gone along and it's given us, I need an Anthropic AI key. So it's not all automated and too easy, but it's tried to approve all of the things. Quite magical stuff, isn't it? All right. Gone through so much. We're on to question time. What questions do you have? What would you like to know, or what would you like to tell me? Please use the questions field in GoToWebinar and I will make my way through them. Lauren says, I'm not sure if I'm the only one having this. We talked about the sound before, but you've got a follow-up question, which makes me think that got resolved. And Lauren says, other themes it finds good though. How do they compare to what a human researcher identifies? Okay. Great question. So I'm going to not worry about Bolt because I don't think the Bolt one I did is commercial grade. If I wanted to spend some time iterating it, maybe I can get it to commercial grade. But we have a team which has spent 5 years building our text categorization tool. So I feel you're not going to get there that quickly. Let's go into the thoughts about France data. We'll go in, we'll choose text categorization. Okay, now I'm going to tell it to create themes. I'm just going to default to create 10. If I said to a human being, create 10 themes, will I get exactly the same themes? No, I won't. But if I talk to 2 humans and ask them to generate 10 themes each, will they get exactly the same themes? No, they will not. I don't have any evidence at all at this stage that humans are better at creating themes than AI. I think actually AI is better at it than humans at this stage. But obviously, if you're a legend at doing it, that's not true. Now, I quickly went through to create 10, and 10 is kind of a magical number. For most data sets, 10 does a reasonably good job. If it was an important problem for me, though, I wouldn't get it to create 10. I'd have a slightly different workflow. What I would do is I would tell it to create 20 or 30 themes, depending on how much data I had. And having created them, I would get it to classify all the data into the themes. And we have another webinar on text analysis, text categorization, which I encourage you to check out. So for our users, the text categorization is easily the biggest value point that they get out of AI today. The 2 new agents that I've just shown you are very new though, and they're most useful for the research agent. For a new researcher is particularly valuable. The data preparation agent only released last week, so we don't really know yet. So if we look at person number 1, they've set fashion and food, categories food, fast. And if we look over here, food, fashion, down here, fashion, which kind of makes sense. So I think at the classification level, it does as well as human beings. Again, we know that if you get 2 people, if you give them the same code frame, they tend to only get around 80% consistent between them anyway. And so the AI is not going to be the same as you because people are not the same at doing this. The only case where I find that AI is systematically bad is where the data is ambiguous, but a human has context that makes the ambiguity disappear, which, there can be cases. Like in our company, we have, when, when, say, a customer churns, which is thankfully very rare, we classify the data on the reasons why they have churned. Now, if the person didn't reply to us at all in correspondence and they never opened the software, we don't really know. Right now, and so in that situation, a human being will tend to, if they're in the team that's responsible for the churn, they might go something like, they didn't like the software, but they really don't know, right? And then there's situations where humans and AI start to draw large differences. Dan says, is Displayr working around converting insights into a short video summary as opposed to generating a traditional report? No, Dan, we are not. It is never even been proposed to us before. It's an interesting idea. At the moment, our goal is very much on trying to automate the things that people use our software to do. And so we're trying to get to we're trying to make sure that somebody who has a workflow that currently might take them 10 hours on a project, we can get that down to a few minutes. That's the kind of stuff that we're really focused on doing. A video summary would be broadening the bandwidth of what we're trying to do, and we'd love to do it. It's a great idea, but there are a lot of technologies out there which already do that kind of stuff pretty well, whereas there aren't a lot of technologies that are great at getting market research reporting and analysis done faster. Justina says, I've used the research agent, super useful, thank you. But I find that I have to run it over and over and tweak the information to get what I want. For example, in the sample section, I mentioned I want to compare 3 groups. At the end of the research question, I want to profile all the research questions by these groups like a crosstab, but it doesn't. Any recommendations? I do have a recommendation for you there. And this is a really interesting point. So let's go into the research agent. Now, one of the interesting things about AI, and this is one of the things about context, is, and we're going to skip this bit here, that it's really, really important that you describe how the data has been collected? What does it represent? And that's what this first thing is trying to do. And when we redo this as a conversation, as more of a conversational, check this explicitly. Now, what you've done, Justina, is you've said, you've interpreted this as, I want to describe the samples I want to look at, or the buckets I want to look at, which isn't going to help the AI at all. It's going to confuse it. What it's trying to understand is, for example, is it representative national sample of people aged 18 plus in USA collected in August 2025 in an online panel. So that's one example of a description of a sample. Now let me give you a different example of a description of a sample and explain why they're so different. So either of these could be a description of the sample. And why does it matter to the AI? Well, it matters hugely. Let's say that in the sample, we've got 70% men and 30% women. If I believe this is true, that difference between men and women is a data quality issue. If I believe this is true, that difference between men and women is an insight. Men are much more likely to buy, right? So you're actually unable to analyze data without having a clear description of the sample. And this is something we always do automatically, but it's an example of something where when you think about how you break the AI down into break research and past tasks, this becomes one of those little micro tasks you have to work out. So this is what you want to focus on doing that. You would then want to go in your research questions, you're going to something like profile all other questions by, and this is where you describe your three groups. But if you actually want to create these three groups and they're not in the sample today, the research agent is too crude. So you would want to, if you've got these groups, so let's say the groups you've got are age, and you've decided that you want to have 3 buckets of age. Today, the research agent will just cross-tab it by age, and it's going to assume these age groups are the age groups you want to compare. And so if you really want to compare people aged under 45, you would first set up the data to do that. So let's say you just want to compare people in 2 buckets, we'll call older or younger people. Yeah, so you'd want to do your data prep like this and give it the specific instruction to go through. Now, clearly we would love to be doing all that through a conversational user interface. We ain't there yet, but we know we have to get there. Phil says, can AI weight the sample? Yes and no. If you have a weight in your data set, it will use that weight. But if you haven't created the weight, you're going to have to old school manually create it, which is you go to your data thing, you click plus, and you go weight. And so let's say we're weighting by gender. Anyway, and we have other videos and ebooks on how to do the weighting and lots of stuff you can do by weighting. So many of you are already mentally where we would like to be, which is you're like, I just want to use a conversational way of interacting and telling Displayr to do everything. We haven't built that yet. We know we have to build it. It's a lot harder than it might look. Well, harder for us anyway. So we know we want to get there. I think everybody is aware of that particular future. Just a hard future to get to. Daniel says, are there any plans to incorporate AI in the presentation side of Displayr for the formatting slides, changing fonts, editing the aesthetics of chats? Yeah, we definitely know we have to do that. It's going to take quite a while. There are lots of good products out there. I wish I could remember them. Ray Pointer told me a great one the other day, and it's just escaped the tip of my head. We do know we want to do that, but this kind of comes back to the point that Dan, my response to Dan before, who was asking, it'd be cool if we could have video generation reports, which I agree, it's cool. We are very much focused on improving the efficiency of things that researchers currently do, rather than focused on increasing the things that researchers can do. That's kind of the strategic call that we've made at this stage. Because we've only got 50 or so engineers, so there's so much we can do, although we're obviously, in theory, getting much more productive using tools like Bolt. Lauren asks, how much of this is or will be available in Q? None of this is available or will be available in Q. So Q, I love Q. It's the 6th, Scary, isn't it? It's the 6th market research product that I designed, but I did it in 2005. Displayr is a much better product. You might be attached to Q, and I can appreciate that, but the challenge that Q has, it's a desktop application that greatly limits the ability to do a whole lot of things. And that's one of the key reasons Displayr is cloud-based. Now, Displayr being cloud-based sometimes feels a little bit slow. It's actually not really, but it feels a little bit slower in certain situations. But it's the only way that most modern technology can be, such as large language models, can be incorporated, is in a cloud-based tool, which is what Displayr is. So no, it ain't going to come into Q. And more generally, it's kind of obvious to us that products like Q and all traditional data analysis tools are just going to disappear completely, because AI will automate the grunt work and will interact via conversations. That's the end, guys. All of our customers out there, thank you for being our customers. Love to get any feedback on any of the stuff that you're seeing here, and have a great rest of your days, everybody. Bye now.